5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey space enthusiasts, I'm back from vacation and we have a new episode. My guest Ole Dokka probably knows the Norwegian space ecosystem like nobody else. He's the organizer of the Spaceport Norway conference, which is annual and it will take place in Oslo next week. We talk about what is going on in space in Norway, including exciting things like the new Andøya spaceport, and of course also about his conference. Enjoy.
My name is Raphael, and I'm an investor and advisor to space companies. Just as a reminder, this podcast is for informational purposes only, and nothing should be taken as investment advice. This podcast is sponsored by NanoAvionics, a satellite manufacturer and mission integrator. Their technologies enable many space companies worldwide to offer services that improve life right here on Earth, such as providing global connectivity, conducting Earth observation, or contributing to scientific discoveries. Check them out, and also check out my episode with the CEO and co-founder. Sadly, I am not a rocket scientist, but I'm an alumnus of the International Space University. ISU offers a number of educational programs about space worldwide. Check them out at isunet.edu.
And just some final things before we start the episode about ourselves. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platforms such as Apple or Spotify. If you want us help expand our work, you can do so and support us at www.patreon.com/Space Business Podcast, and we'll also put that link in the episode notes. And lastly, you can follow us on Twitter at podcast_space.
Welcome back, space enthusiasts. Finally, time for another episode. I actually have been on vacation. Yes, I actually take vacation sometimes, but now we finally have the next episode. And I'm very pleased to have as my guest today, Ole Dokka from Norway. Welcome, Ole.
Thank you very much, Ralph.
Ole, can you just give us a sort of short introduction of yourself, please?
I'll try to cut it short. I have an extensive corporate background, 20 years of working with strategy, innovation, business development, that kind of thing, before I started to actually move into the space area. So I established Spaceport Norway as a meeting arena and kind of a space business conference in 2016. I actually launched it at IC. And from 2016 to now, I've been pretty much only working with space.
So 2016, so, these days we're almost like used to getting a lot of headlines in the press about space, and including the SpaceX launches and everything. But 2016, it was much quieter around space. And you're saying you're like a corporate guy. How did you come up with that idea?
Well, it was kind of a little bit complexity because I was working in the oil and gas industry. So I had this ongoing process with myself all the time. I can't really be doing this anymore. Working with oil and gas, I had, a super good salary and great benefits. And everything was fantastic. At the same time, I had 3 kids, and I was kind of thinking about this. What can I use? What can I spend? How can I spend my time better in a way that is interesting, that can create a lot of benefits for the world and for a lot of people, create new jobs? And space was kind of lying there as unexplored territory. And as many people, I'm a pretty old guy. I'm 56 years old, so I can actually remember seeing the landing on the moon, sitting on my father's lap. And I think most of my generation has that kind of space fascination from that area. Yeah. But going into the space domain, for me, it's not about only fascination and, all this is so fantastic and inspirational. It's really about business because I saw so many opportunities that was not really exploited and a market that was really young kind of in shaping. And you're completely right. I mean, 2016, nobody understood what I was talking about. Now in 2022, and as you know, you will have a space conference in Oslo next week. Mm-hmm. It's completely different. The interest is so much higher. And for the first time ever, we actually sold out all the tickets. Terrific. So that's a kind of a great signal, if you like, that there's something going on.
Yeah, we'll come back just in a minute in general to talk more about it. But I just want to keep asking a little bit about your bio, because, one reason I'm doing this podcast is basically to try to attract more people to the space sector, right? Because, you may be seeing the same things that I'm seeing, which is basically we're having increasing work shortages, just like space startups not being able to find people, both on the technical and non-technical side. And so I was say, like, if you want to grow the space sector to this like multi-trillion-dollar size that we're hoping, we definitely need to get much more people inside the space sector. So that's one reason I'm doing the podcast. And so stories like yours, like I guess mine as well, but like since you're the guest, yours, they're good stories, right? Because we had sort of like the former corporate Ole, and then you decided to come and join the space sector. Can you just give us a little bit more detail how you went about, like for the benefit of our listeners, how you went about doing that? Sort of like, for example, did you start researching or reading stuff, talking to people? How was that process?
I was a little bit, I had some a good kind of starting point, because there was a commercial venue that was asking a lot of people, is it possible to do something on the space industry? And most people came, and I was invited to this meeting, and I was the only one that actually was saying that we should do this in a very business-oriented way. We should create something that is actually enabling people to see the opportunities, the business opportunities that this could create, maybe try to position space as a platform for innovation, and et cetera, et cetera. And for some reason, they kind of liked my idea. And then I got, a budget I could use to learn, because I obviously have to learn a lot. So the first year, I traveled around the world pretty much, and attended conferences, had meetings with space companies, and met all the big agencies to learn as much as possible. Because I think going into this today it's still a special domain. You need to know what you're doing. You need to know what it's all about. You can't only talk about, let's go to the moon or mine asteroids or whatever. There was so much crazy stuff going on also in 2016. So you have to kind of know what you're talking about. And I kind of used that year to learn and to recruit speakers for my first conference in 2017. And I think that is needed. You have to, dive into it. You have to read a lot. You have to meet people. You have to be kind of humble about it, because I came from oil and gas at the time and was a communication leader, strategic communication leader. So I had to kind of reconfigure my brain in a way in order to understand what's needed in the space industry.
And I guess the good news for people today, like 6 years on, is it's much easier, right? Because there's many more conferences and many more materials out there to learn if people want to learn and join our sector.
Absolutely. At the same time, it's not easy. It's never easy, right? And now we have a kind of different problem, because after COVID, there's conferences all over the place all the time. I mean, there will be some kind of fatigue almost, because there's so many events, right? So, and also I need to say this, Raphael, that I'm not really a conference guy. I mean, that's not my background. So I would like to see new partnerships, new projects, new investments. That's why I'm doing it. So it's not to create a cool event. It's to see that 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever companies after a Spaceport Norway event actually start to work together.
That's terrific. And we'll come back to that, sort of your future plans in the space sector. But since at the moment, it's kind of ironic you're saying the conference guy, but of course you are organizing a space conference, and you have been for the last few years. So let's just talk a little bit about that. Like you mentioned, Spaceport Norway is going to be happening in Oslo next Tuesday and Wednesday. Well, I guess starting Monday night, and then the main conference Tuesday and Wednesday. And I'm very happy and honored to come and speak and participate in the panel as well. So thank you again for the invitation. So let's talk a little bit about Spaceport Norway. You said the first one was as early as 2017?
Yes.
How big was that? Roughly speaking.
It was, I remember pretty much exactly how many people there were attending. So it was like 100 and maybe 92 people.
That's actually not bad for 2017.
No, but I think, maybe if 10 or 15 of them paid tickets.
Okay.
So 40 of them were speakers. So it was really, really difficult to get off the ground. And the people financing me, they were, in total, had total anxiety for everything. But we managed to pull it off. And I think it was still a good experience for a lot of people. And for many, and this is a kind of a cool thing also, because from the first event in 2017, and I have to be honest with you, I did hardly know what I was doing. But it was a success in a way, because several of the young people that I got in there for free, today they run space startups.
Cool. That's exactly what we need. That's the idea, right?
Exactly. So I think, even if it was not a commercial success and it was very limited in, both, high level or high profile speakers and all that, we still managed to pull something off that is actually existing today and generating, work and jobs and revenue. So that's kind of my perspective on every part of this journey.
And so fast forwarding to Spaceport 2022, how big is it now, and what are sort of other major changes along the way?
Well, right now I have a little bit of a different problem because I had a target on actually 400 attendees this year. And also a much stronger business focus in the program. So it's very, we have also some inspirational stuff, but we already passed that. I think, right now I'm looking to 425, 430 maybe. There's a lot of high-level people, and there's kind of coming in. I mean, I have 2 tickets that I try to, to give to people that they can buy still. Yeah. But it's basically sold out. And it's going to be super full. So I think it's going to be a great event, really. No, we have this interesting times because, as you know, we will have a operational spaceport in Norway next year.
Yes, Andøya.
Andøya. And this is a catalyst for a lot of the interest, obviously. But that's not all, right? So this will give Norway a very, strong position in the launch market. And that's going to create a lot of value. But we see also that, very innovative and exciting companies like Spin Launch, they're also coming to Norway and will be at the conference next week. And that's a completely different approach to the whole kind of launch to LEO task. So even if we have now, a spaceport that is positioned to, be a good platform for launch companies like ESA Aerospace and others, there's also other things going on, and I think that is very cool.
Was that, I should have asked, I mean, the name of the conference is Spaceport as well. How did you pick that? Was that already sort of like with the vision of having the Norwegian spaceport, or was it more sort of like random?
Not really. I mean, I'm guilty of coming up with that name, and it was a conceptual thing, like, we should, try to create a port for all people that would like to venture into the space domain. And at that point in time, I had obviously a focus on the oil and gas industry because I saw some opportunities there, but also other kind of sectors where I could create some kind of multidisciplinary arena where they could meet the space people. So it's a conceptual thing. It was not really about the spaceport in Andøya. And, to be quite honest with you, Andøya Spaceport should really be named Spaceport Norway. but that's my name. So, yeah.
Well, they can't. You took the domain and everything.
Of course. So, yeah.
So there you go. So in terms of the conference, so it was like 420, 430 people. Can you give us an idea, sort of like the mix of people? I mean, you already kind of were teasing that it's not like it's only Norwegians, right? You mentioned companies like Spin Launch and ESA Aerospace are coming. Yeah. So what are some of the sort of important characteristics of the public?
There is actually more Norwegian, I think, industry profiles this year than ever before because there's so much going on in Norway right now. So you have several companies also competing for positions, like 2 companies that will actually, they have the same ambition on creating a satellite factory, if you like, and assembly integration, facilities. That's interesting. Never happened before. So there will be competing forces also on the program talking about this stuff. But so there will be, of course, a bunch of Norwegians, and as I told you about the Andøya Spaceport, they will be there, and there's a lot of interested also suppliers and companies that is a part of that value chain. But we have participants from all Europe, from a bunch from the US. So there will be a good diversity, I think, and we will also have a lot of people outside the space industry, including Equinor, which is the biggest oil and gas company in Norway, which is also one of the most innovative technology companies in Norway. And I still think they are a Fortune 50 company, especially now with the insane revenue streams they have because of everything that's happened. The war and everything. So there's going to be a diverse crowd, and of course we will have researchers, academics, as always. But there's a large group of people that is really industrial and business oriented.
That's really good news because again, in the spirit of bringing in more people to the space sector. I mean, I was when I was previously mentioned, I was talking about individual people, but of course we need to bring the non-space corporates in as well. And of course, you're right. Norway, of course, is very strong in certain sectors where I think space technology should be used, right? Like you mentioned, Equinor of oil and gas, but I mean, Norway is, correct me if I say something wrong, but I think it's also very strong in things like forestry, right? Forestry, paper, shipping, of course, and there's lots of things we can do with space technology for shipping companies, even fish farms. So
Absolutely.
It's good to hear. So these companies are getting more interested and they are coming to the conference and interacting.
Yes. But again, even if I feel like already, I mean, as I told you before we actually started to record the podcast, it's been a wild week, right? I've been working, pretty much around the clock, and I'm never satisfied, right? So I see that, now I have a good group of people outside the space sector that was actually would like to be there, but I would like more of that to happen, and I think it's crucial for the space industry as well that you are able to actually engage with those big companies that actually need it, but they don't know it. They don't have the insight or knowledge about it. So that's also part of the mission in a way to make sure that they are starting to understand that maybe this is actually something we should use.
Yeah, so it's almost like an educational, like a teaching event, and then they can meet the relevant people right there.
Absolutely.
At the event as well. So generally speaking, so this is a very open question, but let me ask it anyway. So with your experience now for a few years, and like you said, there's so many space conferences now around the world. It's sort of really like, for some reason, the last 1 or 2 years it exploded. When you go about organizing Spaceport, what in your mind, what makes a good space conference? What are some of the elements you care about to make sure people are walking away from the experience and think, this is great, this is adding value, I'm going to be back?
It's obviously I think a lot about this, but I think it has to have some balance between real business value, that you can actually, meet people, that you can maybe establish a good relationship with, or even, go further than that and establish partnerships and, really see the value in meeting each other. And I actually think that the conference as a channel, the most important function, especially now after COVID, is the meeting arena where people actually can meet. And that's why I do this this year. I do it total physical. There will be no streaming. I will do some recording, but it's actually not streaming at all because I would like it to happen there. And so the meeting arena and the kind of function that is kind of one of the most important things. When it comes to programming and stuff, that's also a science by itself. But I think to have a good balance between this really strong business teams that is current, they are relevant, it's going on right now. It's not like you don't speak about things that happened 5 years ago on Spaceport Norway conference because that's not really relevant anymore. That's why I'm not recruiting speakers like Apollo astronauts and stuff like that, because it's fantastic history, but this is not about history, it's about the future. So the balance between the business teams and some inspirational stuff, like what will happen in 5 years, and that's why I know that Pete Warden as well, and Pete Warden is coming, and he will talk about the solar sail technology and everything that goes on with that, and how we can actually explore the solar system a lot faster and cheaper. So we need to find this, the nuggets. Also to kind of satisfy the fantasy and the imagination of people. But as I said, the business focus is the most important thing for me.
No, terrific. And so besides, let's finish up on the conference. So if I may ask you, so there's a 2-day program with, many exciting speakers, panels. You mentioned Pete Worden is coming, for example. Anything you're particularly excited about to hear?
It is actually the last speaker. I mean, excited about a lot of things, but let's have a start and the end. Because Geraldine Aja, the director of the commercialization in ESA, she will have the main keynote. And I actually talked to her, or I talked to her PA more likely, and asked directly, would Geraldine Aja like to actually have It's Time to Be Bolder, which is my title for the conference this year, as her title of her talk. And then I said, this is about, all the challenges we have today in the world. All the development that is going on, we need to be bolder and invest more money and resources and dedicate more to the space domain. And after 2 minutes, I got a reply on that and said, yes, she would like to do it. So I'm excited about that because I have no idea what she will, talk about. But it's time to be bolder is the title. So I hope it's going to be bold.
Yeah.
So and I think she is also a very kind of sharp businesswoman. I look forward to that in a big way. And as I said, it's hard to kind of pull something out, but we will also end the conference on a very high note with an architect and a really, star architect, Jakob Lange from Big Architects in Denmark. They're doing all kinds of signal buildings all around the world, and they're really, really working with space. So he will have a talk about, architecture for the moon, for Mars, for Earth, and how these things are actually connected and how we can use technology and that we already actually possess to make this happen. And this is not like, dreaming sci-fi stuff. They're really doing hard work on it. So I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be a super talk.
I'm definitely looking forward to that one too. I've been aware that some architects are starting to think about sort of structures on the moon and other places. And yeah, we definitely want to have buildings which are, of course, they have to be functional so we can survive. But ideally, they should also be cool looking because, I mean, come on, it's in space, right?
Yeah, sure. And what I think is also super interesting with it is that, going into the future, we know that we have to spend or use resources in a different way on Earth as well. We have to be much more careful how we use water, how we use energy, how we produce food. And so a lot of these things is super critical in space and will be beneficial on Earth.
For Earth, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like you say, if you go to a place like Mars, right, pretty much everything has to be recycled. It has to be what we call a closed-loop system. And so, yes, that should be able to be useful on Earth.
You have to learn to really like your urine.
Yes, the famous example from the International Space Station. It's funny as we're both sipping on our cups of tea here. It would be very different on the ISS. We're suddenly reminded of that. Anyway, let's shift gears a little bit, Ole. Besides, or partly because you're doing the conference, right? And you've been looking at the sector now for a few years, well, internationally, but of course also being based in Norway. You're probably one of the best, if not the best person to talk about the Norwegian space ecosystem. And so I just want to ask a little bit about it in general, what you're seeing in Norwegian space ecosystem, what there is right now in terms of, developed companies. Well, there's obviously some developed companies, right? Like a Kongsberg. There's, I assume, a bunch of startups as well. I think that there's a Norwegian Space Agency, which I think has actually been around for a few decades. Yeah, if you could just sort of give us the lay of the land and what's going on in Norwegian space.
Yeah, I can try. This is actually not easy because it's evolving, to speak, right? And I think with the danger of kind of putting too much emphasis on the spaceport or the spaceport, that is also a very important component right now, because people are starting to see that, this is actually, enables us to get to space and enables us to get to orbit. And so that is fueling a little bit of what's happening. We can go back to the Space Agency, which also is a very dear and important partner for me. I work very close with them. I also do jobs for them, actually. But they're also on this journey from, a more traditional, maybe research and science-oriented space agency organization to a much more business and industry-driven organization. And this has happened especially after they got the new DG, Christian Hauglie Hansen, which I see is really kind of changing things. So they are important, but they're not the only thing. But they're doing an important job, definitely to stimulate and facilitate the development we see now. I would like to think that Spaceport Norway also have a little bit part of this to engage, especially the younger audience, the younger startups, and we have ISA Bix in Norway, managed by Kjeller Innovation, that is also doing more activity and There's more startups coming from that. And I think all the big players, you mentioned Kongsberg, is also heading towards a kind of a more new space approach to how they work. They've been doing the things, in a certain manner for a number of years. And now they're starting to kind of change that up a little bit and invite more into the process. So there's so much going on. But what we actually lack is a vibrant investor scene. Because we don't have that. We have a few companies that's starting to get interested. Snø Ventures will be a part of the panel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very encouraging that they are really, focusing on what could they do here and what kind of deal flow they could be a part of. But it's still a little bit, in the molding, if you like, how we can engage with the investors. In Norway, traditionally, people invest in two things: oil and gas and property.
Yes. I mean, this is not so different from where I sit in Switzerland. Well, not oil and gas, but property certainly, and big stocks, large cap stocks. Yeah. But I guess, this is talking about private investors, and that's going to be interesting to hear what some of the local private investors like Snø Ventures say at the conference. And of course, there's also the option of public financing. And so, there's the Norwegian Space Agency, but is there something like, more and more countries these days are developing almost like national space strategies because they think it is such an important thing? Obviously, famous example in Europe is of course.
Yes, there are some things in the making right now that I can't really talk about even. But there's initiatives that will be, if they succeed and get the needed anchoring and ownership, will be substantial. And so this is also, it's not been really, public yet. But I know about it, and I'm kind of have some good friends giving me some heads up. So I know that there's, more coming. At the same time, I think that the Space Agency will be instrumental in also making that happen, or making that successful. The Space Agency has traditionally been more or less focused on ESA and EU, but I think that will also, be completed with an even bigger picture when we get these different programs to happen. I'm not sure how much we should talk about defense and the defense sector, but obviously with everything that goes on right now. Sure. And NATO has established, different funds and financing institutions. That's also a big part of what will happen in the future, I think. So, and I think it's interesting that this is happening, and I think it will be valuable for many.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, and I talk about this a lot. The defense sector has always, since the beginning of the space age, been intertwined with the space sector, right?
Absolutely.
To the extent that Yuri Gagarin and Shepard basically both went to space on top of modified nuclear missiles.
Exactly.
And of course, with everything that's happening in the world today, it's actually these budgets are only going up and more is coming back into space. But that's kind of the reason why I asked this question about the sort of public funding side, because of course Norway, because of the oil and gas and sort of good governance, is of course the country has substantial. I think famously you guys have still the largest pension fund in the world, so there's substantial funds available for investment. Plus, so that's on the public side. Plus, again, coming back to the corporates, right? I mean, the companies like Equinor also have a lot of cash flow, like you pointed out.
Yeah, and of course, I mean that I think the potential that could be realized if we are able to actually engage big industrial players like Equinor is enormous. But it needs to be done in a strategic and business-oriented way. You can't just go to a corporate executive meeting in that kind of corporation and say, "Wait, we have a lot of interesting space projects. Please give us some money," because that's what people actually are doing. Or have been doing for some time, and it doesn't work like that. You have to actually show them that this is valuable.
This is good for your business. Yes,
exactly. So you will either save a lot of cost, or you will actually generate, an ROI over a number of years that you can actually relate to. And a lot of these bigger companies that they're used to think about 15 to 20 years ahead. But I think the space sector in general has been a little bit poor in the business thinking, and that's why maybe they haven't been able to engage players like that. But I think that's moving as well. So, and you mentioned the public part. I mean, obviously, Norway is a rich country. We have a lot of cash in that pension fund, and at the same time, we have responsible politicians. So carefully, managing that fund and have good processes for it. So it's no easy lunch there. But if we can position space as a high potential opportunity or a really, strong domain for export, for instance, because Norway is a super small country, so there's no market in Norway for anything, right? So our market is Europe and the world, basically. I think the interest will also increase there, and actually know it is. So people are looking into this as we speak, pretty much to see, okay, maybe we can actually make this industry grow a lot more because we see that we can actually deliver to this big global market.
Yeah, because I mean it's sort of a funny comparison, right? Sort of totally different country, but as you're probably aware, I know you were at ISC in Paris and you saw sort of the very impressive big roof of the Saudi Space Commission, right? And so I think like, well, there's two countries which sort of historically generating a lot of cash from oil and gas, right? But of course that's not going to go on forever. Also, like you say, a very limited internal market because the population sizes are not that big. And so countries which kind of should think about, okay, what is some cool stuff that we can redeploy our capital in the future?
Absolutely. Yeah, no question about it. So the potential for Norway to do more in this field is obviously very, large. But we also have, if you compare it to Saudi Arabia, we actually have more, more legs to stand on than them, actually. So we have a substantial oil and gas business, which is really, something that we expect to maybe in 5 to 10 years be a lot less significant. But we also have, fish industry, forest industry,
shipping.
Shipping. So we are kind of a little bit more robust when it comes to the big change that will come. Everybody's expecting it, and maybe the oil and gas companies more than anyone. They know that this will happen, right? So they are pretty much more interested in divesting than maybe the politicians are. If you understand what I mean. They see that this is, they have like a 5-6 year perspective where they actually know what the reserves are, what the projects will be. After those 6 years, it's starting to get foggy. It's starting to get difficult to see, okay, where do we actually get our revenue from? So they are really interested in moving into this and learning as much as possible. And I would like to mention Equinor, which was really my former employer, under a different name, that they have high-level strategic people actually looking into space right now. So it's interesting.
That is very good to hear. Equinor, that used to be Statoil, right?
Statoil, yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
I remember.
It changed now in a couple of years after I left.
Ole, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to point out? It could be about the conference or about the Norwegian space ecosystem. Yeah,
I would like to mention, going back to Andøya, which is, I think, is an exciting thing for us Norwegians, because at the conference we will have 4 young women presenting everything. And this sounds a little bit cheesy the way I told you now, but, these are super smart, strong, enabled, powerful women. And that's a big thing for me because there's too many old men in this business, right?
Oh, yes.
So to see that happening, and these 4 are all leaders in their field and are pretty much crafting everything from scratch and building up an operation that has never been done before. I think that is very exciting because there's not that many commercial spaceports around in the world, as you know. So this will be a first for a lot of things, and I'm very excited about that you can actually see that women are coming on board and kind of will maybe not dominate, but will be very visible in the industry going forward. And I think that is a very good thing.
I mean, yeah, you don't have to dominate yet. I mean, the last time I ran the statistics, it was something like 85% of higher level executives in aerospace were male. So even if we move from the 85, like if we move in the right direction, it's already that's very.
No, we have a lot to go on. Yeah.
Perfect. No, I'm looking forward to that as well. I think those are the 4 women presenting Andøya, you're saying, or in general. The 4 ladies are presenting Andøya.
Yeah, they're presenting the kind of the plans and what they're doing right now, and also kind of trying to visualize or describe how the value chain look. And so this is also indirectly, in my opinion, also an invitation to a lot of the companies there to see that, we have this, but maybe we don't have that, right? So so there could be in direct kind of opportunity opening up. But anyway, I think it's a very cool thing to see women are coming onto this more operational side and leadership side of the space industry. And if I could say one more thing, because I'm a little bit proud of it, students is something that I think is super important. And this year I managed to get financing for 100 students. So they get in for free. Because of the sponsors I have been lucky to attract, and also I sponsor some of them myself. But 100 students on master or higher level that is super motivated, super smart, is going to be a part of that kind of interesting mix of industry, leaders and suppliers, and I look forward to see that kind of boil a little bit.
No, absolutely. That's another thing we absolutely need, right? We're talking about sort of I forget now what it was during the podcast or before, but basically the worker shortages that we're starting to see in space, right? So we need to make sure we train more and more people for space as well. And do you remember, are those mostly engineering students, or is it also a mix of non-engineering
There's a little,
students?
to be honest, there's still the majority is engineering students, but there's also other disciplines.
Okay.
So and what I've been trying to attract most is kind of business side of things, because I think that is needed. Yeah. So there will be economics, people there, and there will be some, biotechnology people, but also a lot of, mechanical or engineering people, and also, of course, computer science people. So hopefully there will be a kind of a good, diverse constellation of students, and as I say, it's access to a talent that is so hard to get, because these are really top of the line people, all of them. So I expect that to be a good addition to a regular conference.
Great. So coming full circle to where we started with your bio, and so now you have Spaceport Norway and you got it going, and it's clearly a very successful event now. But you're already saying like you're sort of excited about space in general. What do you think some of your future projects might be in the sector?
Well, I pretty much have the next year lined up already. So I can mention one thing. Maybe you saw it at the ISC in Paris, but there will be a global space conference on climate change next year. That is arranged by the IAF, but hosted by the Norwegian Space Agency. And I'm the project manager for that.
Okay.
And
that's going to keep you busy. Yeah.
Exactly. So the day after I finish Spaceport Norway, I'm all in on that. So that's another conference, but from my perspective again, my contribution will not be to manage the event, but the strategic architecture, the branding, the communication, trying to really position it as a very a new but relevant meeting arena for the high level politicians and also executives in the world to attack the biggest challenge of all time. So that's one thing. But if I could talk a little bit more about what I think is personally super interesting, I'm so looking for the Starship to launch.
Same here.
Yeah, because I think that will also, if it's successful, it will change everything.
Yeah.
The whole kind of, the business will be totally different after. And the cost per kilo to space and also long-term, long space flights will be so different that it's going to enable us to do a lot more. So I think, there's a lot of interesting things going on in LEO, and I think that space has a big place in order to fight climate change or enable us to fight climate change. I think it's too late to stop it, unfortunately. but maybe we can, be prepared in a different way and learn how to deal with it. And I think space is a very, very interesting and important position in that. But looking a little bit ahead, Starship is going to either, crash and burn, or it's going to change everything.
Yeah, and of course, there's always, space is hard, famously, as we say, right? These are not mutually exclusive, right? It could crash and burn like a few times and eventually work. And even if it works a little bit later, it's still going to completely revolutionize things, like you're saying.
Yes, it will. So that's kind of one of the things that I'm really personally, looking forward to.
Yeah, same here. So, Ole, we always finish up these episodes basic traditionally on the same question, which is about science fiction. So I just want to ask you whether you enjoy science fiction, and if so, what are some of your favorite works? It could be books, movies, TV series.
Yeah. Well, I love science fiction, and if it's going to be hard to actually give you a long list, but I can easily do it as well. I mean, everybody, I think, with some film interest and science fiction interest, you can't really ignore the Space Odyssey, the Stanley Kubrick movie. Kind of started a little bit with that, but then so that's one of my all-time favorites. Blade Runner is another one. Alien, and in particular the first one, is a fantastic science fiction movie. Of the more newer movies, I also enjoyed the Interstellar a lot. And I think, looking at the world today, with all the crop challenges, food security issues, etc., you're starting to get, this vibe that Interstellar was not maybe that far off in describing what the biggest challenges we have, are. So I think that is an excellent movie as well. And the last one I would like to mention, because I think it's so intelligent and so kind of sensible, is Arrival. The whole kind of communication and the different dimensions, if you like, in how you perceive time, and I think it was so fantastically intelligent and well acted. So I love science fiction, as you probably hear.
The Arrival is definitely very, very creative. I enjoyed it very much as well. But Ole, thank you so much for coming on. I'm very happy that I'll actually see you in 3 days.
Yes.
And so we'll have a drink. We'll have a drink at the reception.
Looking forward to that.
Very much looking forward to the conference.
Yeah, I look forward to having you, and welcome to Oslo.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for another nominal episode of the Space Business Podcast. Once more, if you enjoyed this, please leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platforms such as Apple or Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_space. You can support us at www.patreon.com/Space Business Podcast. Lastly, if you have any feedback, including ideas for guests, and that may include yourself if you have an interesting space story to tell, or interested in being a sponsor, drop us an email at spacebusinesspodcast@gmail.com. See you for the next episode.